What were our top 5 most popular topics in 2021? You'll find out next on the Church Revitalization podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization podcast, brought to you by the Malfers Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host AJ Matthew. And AJ, this is the final episode of 2021. And so we thought, why don't we share what the most popular topics that we covered on the podcast this year? It's always interesting, right, AJ, to see what hits, what doesn't hit as much.
That's right. Yeah, I enjoyed that. That's like our feedback, or at least one point of feedback for us on what are we going to talk about? It's what do you, the listener, seem to show up for the most? That's great.
Yeah. Great year on the podcast. I just want to say thank you to all of you who listen. I know we don't know who, but we get the gist that we have a loyal base of listeners that listen every week. And we want to thank you for doing that. And for those of you that are new to the podcast, thanks for joining us in 2021. And so
a lot of growth too, Scott. The podcast grew a lot in 2021. So thank you. If you happen to be somebody that said, hey, I'm tuning into these clowns over here, maybe you want to give them a listen too. Thanks for doing that, because our base is just, did we triple? We more than doubled.
I'm not sure. I don't want to misspeak, but It is growing and we appreciate that. We appreciate you sharing, subscribing on YouTube, and sharing the articles online and all the things that you do that help grow this, because at the end of the day, it's not about us. We're not trying to grow a thing for us. We believe that these tools and resources will serve churches and help them as they look to see the kingdom grow their area. So thanks. We just want to say thanks. That being said, let's hop straight to it. Well, we're going to go in reverse order. Number 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and in the show notes we'll link to these different episodes. So if you think, hey, I actually didn't catch that episode, you'll be able to go into the show notes and get the links to all these episodes.
Yep, that's right. And I'll give you that address at the end of today's episode. Number 5 was a bit of a surprise, a dark horse. We don't talk a lot about church planting. We are the Church Revitalization podcast, but there's a lot of crossover between healthy church planting and healthy churches in general. Go figure. So number 5, our 5th most popular episode was the 10 deadly church planting mistakes, back in episode 108, not too long ago. And so that a bit of a surprise, but a really great episode.
Yeah. So it's not a secret to those of you who listen to the podcast regularly that I'm a big fan of church planting. It was an area of study for me in seminary and something that I spent some years of my life doing, being involved in church planting. And so it's a passion of mine. So I am not so secretly pleased to see that episode has done so well. And that gives me good fuel for the next time I say to AJ, let's do an episode on church planting. But in that episode, AJ, we covered what are some of the biggest mistakes that church planters tend to make? And it's really good advice. So I'd encourage you to go back and listen to that episode. If you're someone who's looking to help maybe sponsor a church plant, or maybe you're involved in a denominational organization that plants churches and you want to help out these new guys, or maybe you're looking to plant a church yourself, definitely check that episode out to help somebody sidestep the common potholes, or we call them 10 deadly church planting mistakes.
That's right. Yep. I like data, Scott. So next year, when you want to do another church planting topic, I'll go, okay. Yeah. It was top 5. Number 4, coming in at number 4, small group killers. We've got quite the thing. What does that say about our audience, that they're most interested in death and killing? I don't know. 5 problems that plague small group ministries. That was episode 99. So a little bit earlier in the year. And we talked about the things that are not allowing small group ministries in churches to grow effectively like we would desire them to. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, I think that small groups is an area that's a pain point for a lot of churches. And so probably a reason why this episode did so well. But actually, I encourage you to go back and read that article and listen to that episode, because we weren't just talking about strategic problems. that are on the fringe. If we just do a little bit better marketing, or we just have a little bit better of a curriculum, we try to go at the heart of the problem and what's really driving the dysfunction in small group ministries. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I really encourage you to do that, because I think lots of times we try to, you can't put lipstick on a pig. Is that what the saying is? And I think that's sometimes what we're doing. We're trying to solve a problem without solving the real problem. And in this episode, we go in depth on what the real drivers for dysfunction are in small group ministries.
Yeah, there you go. Speaking of problems, coming in number 3, we had the 5 warning signs of narcissistic leadership. This was episode 83 back earlier in the year. 5 warning signs of narcissistic leadership. Very strong episode. Lots. It's unfortunate that so many people are Googling the term narcissistic leadership and then finding that episode of the podcast. But it's obviously an issue, and people are looking for resources to help resolve that and move past it. Yeah,
this is maybe an interesting side note on this particular episode. So I wrote personally originally published on my own website years ago, this article that's been updated and changed over time a little bit, but it did way better than anything else I've ever written, that particular article. And then we moved it over to the Malfers Group website a number of years ago, and it has been one of our most popular articles on the website for years at this point. And so we decided, hey, let's do a podcast episode on it and talk a little bit about it, and not just have the text of the article available for folks. And so I think this is an issue that transcends, AJ, just church leadership. We see it a lot in culture, we see it in business, we see it in all kinds of things. And so I believe that probably, to be fair, this one may have gotten some traction organically just online and beyond just our normal podcast listener base. But coming in at number 3, a strong episode this year on narcissistic leadership.
Yeah, there you go. All right, moving near the top. Number 2 was 5 roadblocks to a healthy church board. That was episode 95. Roadblocks to a healthy church board. This is an issue that we see commonly in churches, which is probably why it's so near the top, because a lot of leaders and church boards can relate to a lot of dysfunction that happens, sometimes because of narcissistic leadership, not always, but the need for churches to have healthy and effective church boards is so important. It drives and fuels so much good ministry downstream whenever a board is just really working well together and unified, seeking the Lord, and has the courage to do the things that need to be done in a healthy church. So that's just a really important one. And I'm glad that it's done so well. That information has gotten out to the degree that it has.
Yeah, maybe a couple of notes here about this episode. I think that the pandemic highlighted a lot of the inefficiencies and dysfunctions in church boards. The fact that they weren't able to make decisions the way they want to, or there's just been so much inertia, and in an environment where there's the need for rapid change and iteration, the fact that boards weren't able to adapt very well highlighted maybe some of the existing dysfunction in a way, brought it into sharp contrast, whereas in previous years, it maybe would have been easy to ignore it and just go, it's just how it is. The challenges of the last couple of years have brought to light that these dysfunctions really are a problem. As a side note, I've done more work on an individual level in the last year than I've ever done. Not for lack of wanting, I don't think, but I think there's just, a more recognized need. Hey, we need help. Will you help us? And the things that are in here are things that I talk about with boards when I work with them one-on-one at the 30,000 foot level. So definitely check out this episode if you haven't. What episode number is that again, AJ?
That was number 95.
All right, there you go. Check it out.
Yeah, there you go. Really, like you're saying, Scott, I think the pandemic definitely brought to light a lot of that, along with, I think that's also why the small issues and resources are also so popular. Those are 2 really primary things that, as we termed earlier, the COVID exposure brought to light, was the need to connect people with one another and for healthy church boards. So there you go, both in the top 5. Okay, The time has come. The time has come for number 1, Scott. That's a great sound effect. Number 1, why people don't volunteer at your church. And everybody is probably going, that's my number one. And because you're not alone, that's why it was highest listened to or downloaded episode of the podcast for 2021. And we just did this recently. It was episode 109. So that even says something else.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It's the most recent episode on this list, and it's far and away I don't even know that there's one that's close to it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Spin off another episode, podcast just on volunteerism in the church. So the Church Volunteer podcast would probably do well.
Yeah. Yeah. This episode is 3 months newer than our number 2 episode, and it's outperformed it by a pretty good margin. Yeah. This is a popular topic because, again, I think it's speaking to that pain point that's there that everyone can relate to. And it sounds like a clickbaity title, I think, but if you go in and actually read and listen, there's real substance there. There's stuff that's really going to help you and identify some of the reasons why people aren't volunteering at your church and what you can do to fix it. I would also encourage you to go back and listen to episode, it would be 117, and talks about how to build an incompetent team. Some of the reasons why people don't volunteer at your church may actually also be supplemented by the incompetence that we're building into our teams. And if you've listened to 109 but haven't yet listened to 117, maybe go ahead and do that.
There you go. We'll link that in today's show notes, which can be found at malfirstgroup.com/120. This is episode number 120, talking about other episodes. So
that's right.
We've
never done a review episode, so we felt like we're allowed one.
Yeah, well, maybe it'll become
like those episode of Friends. You know what I'm talking about? Any old sitcom at Christmas time.
That's right.
They would do an episode.
None of the actors actually had to come in for that. They just totally created it in the editing room, which is not the case for us. We actually had to show up to.
We had to show up for this. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, yeah. I did my hair for this, AJ.
If we had
I took a shower for this.
Maybe we'll have a producer next year, and he or she will just narrate over, and we'll take the week off.
You mean a producer other than me?
Yeah, that's right. An actual producer.
An actual producer. Yeah. But no, it was good. Actually, I think this was a good exercise. And so for us to look back and reflect on what topics hit. And I do encourage you, because there are a lot of you who are newer to the podcast. Maybe you weren't listening as far back as episode 83 or episode 95. And one side note, AJ, I should say, these are not necessarily the most listened to episodes on our podcast ever. These are just the episodes.
That's right. For last year. For
the last year.
Yep.
It's just worth noting.
Someday maybe we'll just do an overall
all time most popular.
Yeah, that would be good.
These are all from this year.
Yep. Hey, thanks for being with us this year. We're so thankful for you guys. It's because of your listenership that we keep doing this, because that's what motivates us at the Malfirst Group, is to help leaders and help churches. And as long as you keep saying, hey, we want this information and we find it helpful, then we're going to be here to keep doing it. We hope that 2021 was a good year for your ministry, and that you're looking forward to 2022. And we're going to be here with you to walk through it. And we would love to hear from you on what topics would be most helpful for you going into the new year. You can email us that information, leadership@malfirstgroup.com. And you're always welcome to make any comments on the episode or future topics over on YouTube. Hit up the Malfirst Group channel over there, subscribe and click the bell. And we'd love to interact with you over on the YouTube channel. So, Scott, any last words for 2021?
Sayonara. See you next year. That's all I got to say.
Bye, everybody.